She thought she was finally safe. Dr. Kendra Hatcher stepped out of her white Toyota Camry in the dimly lit parking garage of her upscale uptown Dallas apartment complex on the evening of September 2nd, 2015. At 35 years old, the vibrant pediatric dentist had every reason to feel optimistic about life. She was deeply in love with Dr. Ricardo Ricky Paniagua, a successful dentist himself. The couple had plans to fly to Cancun the very next day for a romantic long weekend getaway. Kendra's career was flourishing. She brought smiles and comfort to countless children every day. Her future seemed bright, secure, filled with promise. But in that moment, as she reached for her belongings, a figure emerged from the shadows, wearing dark clothing. A single gunshot rang out, echoing through the concrete levels of the garage. The bullet struck Kendra in the back of the head, exiting under her chin and severing her spinal cord. She collapsed instantly, her body crumpling beside the open car door. Blood pooled on the cold floor. A witness later described hearing an animal-like screaming, followed by the sharp crack of gunfire and screeching tires as a dark Jeep Cherokee sped away. Kendra Hatcher was dead within minutes. What first appeared to investigators as a tragic botched robbery would soon unravel into one of the most chilling murder-for-hire plots in recent Texas history. A story driven not by greed or gang violence, but by raw, obsessive jealousy from a woman who refused to let go of her ex-boyfriend. Brenda Delgado, Ricky Paniagua's former girlfriend, had crossed a line from heartbreak into calculated evil. She hired killers to eliminate the woman who had taken her place, staging the murder to look like a random street crime. The shocking twist came when the accomplices turned on her, exposing the entire paid conspiracy in court. This is the devastating true story of how one woman's inability to move on destroyed a promising life, shattered families, and left a community grappling with the terrifying reality that obsession can turn deadly when left unchecked. Kendra Hatcher grew up with a passion for helping others, particularly children. She pursued dentistry with dedication, eventually specializing in pediatric care. Friends and colleagues described her as warm, energetic, and genuinely caring. She had a bright smile that matched the joy she brought to her young patients. By 2015, she had built a successful practice in Dallas and was enjoying an active social life in the vibrant city. Her apartment at Gables Park 17 in Uptown was a reflection of her achievements. Modern, secure, and conveniently located near her work and the bustling nightlife scene. Ricky Paniagua entered her life as a fellow dental professional. The two connected through shared circles in the Dallas dental community. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Ricky had recently ended a long-term relationship with Brenda Delgado, a woman he had dated for several years. Brenda, who was studying to become a dental hygienist, had been deeply invested in the partnership. When Ricky moved on, something inside her fractured. Those close to the situation later revealed that Brenda struggled immensely with the breakup. She wasn't ready to accept that Ricky had chosen someone new. Instead of seeking closure or focusing on her own future, she became consumed by jealousy and resentment toward Kendra. What began as lingering attachment escalated into full-blown obsession. Brenda started monitoring Ricky's activities. She read his text messages and emails when she could gain access. She followed him around Dallas, keeping tabs on where he went and who he spent time with. When she learned about his growing romance with Kendra, the jealousy intensified into something far darker. Brenda began to view Kendra not just as a romantic rival, but as an obstacle that needed to be removed. In her twisted mindset, eliminating Kendra would clear the path for Ricky to return to her. This kind of obsessive thinking is not uncommon in cases of rejected lovers, but Brenda took it to a horrifying extreme. She didn't lash out in a moment of passion. She methodically planned a murder. Over the weeks leading up to the killing, Brenda reached out to multiple people, testing the waters for someone willing to commit the unthinkable. She approached acquaintances and even her own roommate, Jennifer Escobar, offering money and incentives. According to later testimony, Brenda told one potential recruit she would buy them a car and pay $12,000 if they would kill Kendra. No one took her up on it at first. People dismissed her rants as emotional venting from a bad breakup, never imagining she was serious. But Brenda was persistent. She eventually connected with Crystal Cortez, a single mother who was struggling financially and emotionally. Cortez was down on her luck, raising a child and facing hardships. And Brenda saw an opportunity. She also linked up with Christopher Love, a small-time marijuana dealer with a criminal background. Through Cortez, Brenda arranged meetings and laid out her deadly proposal. The plan was simple yet sinister. Make Kendra's death look like a botched robbery. That way, it would seem random, and suspicion might not immediately fall on anyone connected to Ricky. Brenda provided details about Kendra's routine, her work schedule, her apartment building, and her daily movements. She even helped obtain the murder weapon, a .40 caliber handgun. Payment was discussed in cash, drugs, and small amounts of money. Cortez was promised $500 for her role as the getaway driver. Love would be the trigger man, compensated with cash and marijuana. As the plot developed, Brenda's obsession deepened. Here she continued stalking both Ricky and Kendra. Cell phone records later introduced in court would paint a damning picture of her surveillance. She knew when Kendra left work. She knew the layout of the parking garage at Gables Park 17. She fed this intelligence to her hired accomplices, refining the plan until it felt foolproof in her mind. Meanwhile, Kendra remained blissfully unaware of the danger closing in. She and Ricky were happy. Their relationship was progressing naturally. The upcoming trip to Cancun symbolized a new chapter. Sunny beaches, relaxation, and time to strengthen their bond away from the demands of their busy dental practices. Kendra packed her bags with excitement, completely oblivious that Brenda Delgado had marked her for death. On the evening of September 2nd, 2015, Kendra drove home after a normal day. She pulled into the secure section of the parking garage around 7:42 p.m. Security cameras captured a dark-colored Jeep Cherokee entering the visitor area earlier, waiting, then following another vehicle inside. A person dressed in black exited the Jeep and moved toward Kendra's car. What happened next was captured in fragments by witnesses and footage. Hashem Saad, another resident, exited the elevator and heard the screams and gunshots. He saw a woman lying on the garage floor. The Jeep's lights came on and it sped away. First responders arrived to find Kendra slumped beside her open car door. Her purse and belongings were nearby, but the scene was staged to suggest robbery, though little was actually taken. The medical examiner later determined the cause of death: a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. Yet the bullet's trajectory and gunshot residue on Kendra's hands suggested she may have raised them defensively in her final seconds. Dallas police initially treated the case as a robbery gone wrong, a tragic but unfortunately common crime in urban areas. But detectives quickly noticed inconsistencies. Nothing of significant value was missing. The execution style shot to the head didn't fit a typical panicked robber. As they dug deeper, they learned about Ricky Peniagua's recent relationship with Kendra and his past with Brenda Delgado. The breakthrough came when investigators connected the dots through vehicle sightings and witness statements. A borrowed car linked back to Brenda. When questioned, she admitted loaning it out but pointed fingers at Crystal Cortez. Police located Cortez, who eventually cracked under pressure. Cortez confessed to her role and implicated both Christopher Love as the shooter and Brenda Delgado as the mastermind. Cortez described chilling planning sessions. The group had discussed multiple methods: injecting Kendra with a needle, kidnapping her, or shooting her outright. The final decision was to stage a robbery in the parking garage. On the day of the murder, Cortez drove the Jeep with Love hidden inside. They waited for Kendra. When she arrived, Love approached, demanded her purse in an attempt to make it look like a robbery, and then fired the fatal shot when she resisted or panicked. Cortez heard the shots and knew immediately what had happened. She backed the vehicle out as Love jumped back in, and they fled the scene. Love was arrested soon after. A police K-9 unit found the murder weapon hidden in the center console of his personal car. Ballistics matched it to the bullet that killed Kendra. Love initially denied involvement, but changed his story when confronted with the evidence. He was charged with capital murder. Brenda Delgado, sensing the walls closing in, posted bail after her initial arrest, but fled to Mexico shortly afterward. She became a fugitive, landing on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, with a $100,000 reward. In April 2016, authorities captured her in Torreon, Coahuila, Mexico. She was extradited back to the United States to face justice. The trials that followed exposed the full extent of the obsession. Christopher Love went to trial first in 2018. Crystal Cortez testified against him as part of a plea deal. She detailed how Brenda had recruited them, he provided information, and pushed for the killing. Love was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. Cortez herself pleaded guilty to murder and received 35 years in prison for her role as the getaway driver. Brenda Delgado's capital murder trial began in June 2019, nearly 4 years after the crime. Prosecutors painted her as the cold-hearted mastermind driven by envy. Envy drove Delgado to kill Kendra Hatcher, one prosecutor told the jury. Envy doesn't just make you want the other thing, it makes you want to destroy the other thing. That's what was in her heart. Evidence included cell phone records showing Brenda's surveillance, witness testimony from people she had approached earlier about killing Kendra, and Cortez's detailed account of the planning. Emails and communications further corroborated the conspiracy. Brenda had not acted in a fit of rage. She had methodically orchestrated the death of an innocent woman simply because that woman was dating her ex. The defense tried to cast doubt on Cortez's credibility, suggesting she was framing Brenda to save herself. But the mountain of evidence was overwhelming. After hearing testimony for a week, the Dallas County jury deliberated for less than 20 minutes before returning a unanimous guilty verdict on capital murder. Because of the extradition agreement with Mexico, the death penalty was off the table for Brenda. She was automatically sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She showed no visible emotion as the verdict was read. In victim impact statements, Kendra's family expressed their profound grief. Her mother, Bonnie Jameson, and sister addressed Brenda directly, Works calling her one of the most hated women in Dallas, and emphasizing that justice had finally been served, though it could never bring Kendra back. Kendra's family described her as a loving daughter, sister, and friend, whose light had been extinguished too soon. Her colleagues spoke of the children who would no longer benefit from her gentle care in the dentist's chair. Ricky Paniagua, whose new relationship had unknowingly triggered the nightmare, was left to grapple with guilt and loss. The Cancun trip that never happened became a symbol of stolen futures. The case highlights the dangerous progression of obsessive love turned toxic. Experts in domestic violence and stalking note that when an ex-partner refuses to accept rejection, the risk of violence escalates, especially if they fixate on a new partner. Brenda Delgado's actions went beyond typical stalking. She crossed into conspiracy to commit murder, recruiting vulnerable individuals and exploiting their circumstances for her own vengeful ends. Crystal Cortez later described Brenda's hatred during testimony. She hated her. That simple phrase encapsulated the motive. Not financial gain, not revenge for a wrong done to her, but pure hatred for a woman who had done nothing except fall in love with the same man. In the years since the conviction, the story of Kendra Hatcher's murder has served as a cautionary tale. It underscores the importance of taking stalking seriously. Brenda's early surveillance and attempts to recruit killers were red flags that, had they been reported or acted upon differently, might have prevented the tragedy. It also reveals how seemingly ordinary people, dental professionals, single mothers, small-time dealers, can become entangled in evil when jealousy festers unchecked. Kendra was thriving in her career and her relationship. She had plans, dreams, and people who loved her. On the eve of what should have been a joyful getaway, her life ended in a cold parking garage because one woman could not let go. The killers revealed the plot in court, but the revelation came too late for Kendra. Brenda Delgado sits in a Texas prison today, serving life without parole at the William P. Hobby Unit. Christopher Love remains on death row. Crystal Cortez serves her 35-year sentence. Their confessions and convictions brought legal closure, but they could never restore the vibrant life that was taken. What makes this case even more chilling is the banality of the obsession. Brenda was not a career criminal. She was a woman studying to enter the same professional field as her victims. She lived in the same community, yet envy consumed her to the point of arranging an execution. Families affected by such crimes often speak of the what-ifs. What if Brenda had sought therapy instead of hitmen? What if someone she approached had reported her threats immediately? What if Kendra had been warned about the stalking? These questions haunt survivors and remind society that prevention requires vigilance. Kendra Hatcher's story is one of light extinguished by darkness. A dedicated pediatric dentist who brought comfort to children now serves as a symbol of the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy. Her murder was not random. It was personal, calculated, and paid for in cash, drugs, and promises. As the Jeep sped away that September evening, leaving Kendra bleeding on the garage floor, the perpetrators might have believed they had succeeded in their twisted plan. But justice, though delayed, eventually caught up. The shocking revelations in court exposed the paid plot, ensuring that Brenda Delgado would never go home again. Yet for Kendra's loved ones, no verdict can fill the void. No sentence can return the daughter, sister, friend, or partner who was stolen from them. She thought she was finally safe, planning a romantic escape, building a beautiful life. Instead, she became the victim of an obsession that knew no bounds. In the quiet moments, one can almost hear the echo of that single gunshot in the Dallas parking garage. It serves as a grim reminder. Jealousy doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers plans in the shadows, hires hands to do its dirty work, and waits patiently for the perfect moment to strike. Kendra Hatcher's promising life ended that night, but her story continues to warn others about the deadly potential of a broken heart that refuses to heal. Obsession, when left to fester, does not merely hurt, it destroys. And in this case, it destroyed everything in its path, leaving behind only grief, justice delayed, and the memory of a woman who deserved so much more than the violent end she met. The investigation revealed layers of deception and surveillance that spanned weeks. Brenda's access to Ricky's communications gave her intimate knowledge of his new romance. She knew about the Cancun plans, which likely fueled her urgency. The trip represented a deepening commitment she could not tolerate. By striking the day before the flight, she aimed to maximize the pain and disruption. Courtroom testimony painted a vivid picture of the planning meetings. Cortez described driving around with Brenda in love, scouting locations, discussing contingencies. One rejected idea involved luring Kendra somewhere isolated for a staged accident. Another considered a home invasion. The parking garage was chosen for its relative seclusion in the evening hours and the ability to make a quick escape. After the shooting, the group attempted to dispose of evidence. The gun was hidden, vehicles were cleaned or returned, and alibis were loosely coordinated. But modern forensics and digital trails, cell tower pings, surveillance video, and witness recollections quickly dismantled their story. When Cortez flipped and cooperated, the case against Brenda became ironclad. Her testimony was emotional and detailed, describing Brenda's demeanor as calm and determined rather than frantic. This calculated coldness is what prosecutors emphasized to the jury. This was not a crime of passion, but a business transaction in murder. During Delgado's trial, additional witnesses came forward who had been approached by Brenda in the preceding months. Their accounts of her offers, money, cars, drugs, demonstrated a pattern of solicitation. One woman testified that Brenda spoke casually about wanting Kendra gone, as if discussing a minor inconvenience rather than a human life. The jury's swift deliberation, under 20 minutes, reflected the strength of the prosecution's case. Yet no reasonable doubt remained. Brenda Delgado had masterminded the execution of Dr. Kendra Hatcher out of pure envy. In the aftermath, Dallas grappled with the case's implications for personal safety, especially for women in new relationships with partners who have obsessive exes. Support groups and awareness campaigns around stalking gained renewed attention. Kendra's family advocated for stronger laws and better protections against harassment that escalates. Today, Brenda Delgado remains incarcerated, her appeals exhausted or unsuccessful. The life she sought to reclaim through violence is forever lost to her. Ricky Paniagua has largely stayed out of the public eye, processing his own trauma from the events. Kendra's legacy lives on through the memories of those she touched. Colleagues who recall her dedication, each patient's parents who remember her kindness, and friends who cherish the laughter she brought into their lives. Her murder stands as a stark illustration that the most dangerous threats are sometimes not from strangers in the night, but from calculated plots born in the hearts of those we once trusted or never knew existed. The story of Brenda Delgado hiring a hitman to murder her boyfriend's new girlfriend is more than a true crime tale. It is a profound exploration of human darkness, how love denied can morph into hatred, how obsession blinds reason, and how one decision to cross an irreversible line can ripple outward, destroying lives far beyond the intended target. Kendra thought she was safe. She was wrong. And in that tragic miscalculation lies the enduring horror of this case, the realization that evil can wear a familiar face and plan in silence, and strike when happiness seems closest at hand.